Hi, my name is Juliana and Carver, and I'm 13 years old, and I just wanted to tell you all about my life since I was 5. So it started at our old house when I woke up on Sunday morning with a bump under my arm. So I came into my mom and dad's room and told them that I had a bump under my arm and I didn't know what it was. So we went to the doctors that day. And then the doctor told us that it was sarcoma cancer. So after that, we went to the hospital and got treatment and all. And after that, this was in 2007. And after that, it went away for a few years. And in 2014, it came back in my right eye. So we got surgery done to get a lift on it, and now we're doing chemo, of course, still. And we did radiation, that we're done now. So it's pretty much just over and over. And then we had to spend months in the hospital if you count all the times we were in the hospital for a week. It was just so many. For all of them combined, and it was hard, but it got easier with people who I knew, friends and family, that helped a lot, and they had playrooms that you can go to and other people, and they helped get through the tough times, and they made the tough times good times. So I've obviously been through a lot, and it's been tricky and hard. So here's some things that have helped me, and they can help you too if you're struggling. It's just really hard, but with all the friends and family around and everyone just supporting you in this, it's just really hard going through it, but when you know your friends and family are supporting you, you can get through it and all. You know, you can do your best and try your best to get through it and all, but it's been hard, of course. And it's just so hard to describe. And so, of course, all difficult times. It's very hard, but the hospital food stinks and all, so my dad used to bring me Chick-fil-A and McDonald's sometimes, and when I was just feeling so bad and throwing up and so sick because of the chemo, it was really hard, but to clear my head and all, I used to go to the playroom that they had in the hospital, and that made the time fly quicker. Because when you're in the hospital, time flies like a turtle, really slow. So after all that, as I was coming home from the hospital and going back, I used to get cards, well, I do get cards still, cards and envelopes and packages from people all around the world that I don't really know, but they know me from all my videos. And it just means so much to me that people care about me that much to send stuff like that, and it just means a lot to me, and I can't even describe it.
Juliana just turned 5 in December, and that February she came into our bedroom one morning and was complaining about a bump under her right arm. And we felt it and thought that's really odd because she's not been sick. We don't know why there's this bump under her arm. Next day we took her to the pediatrician and she was stumped too and sent her to have, actually before that she wanted to get some blood work, see if maybe there was some kind of infection we couldn't see. We went to pull her sleeve up to draw blood, and that's when I noticed that she had this swollen area right underneath of her arm, right in here. It was hard to see unless you looked at it at the right angle. So I showed that to the pediatrician, and she said that she was pretty sure that had something to do with the lymph node, and it didn't sound good. So she sent her for an x-ray. That showed nothing wrong with the bones. So she decided she needed an MRI, and somehow talked them into letting her have an MRI that very afternoon. So I took her to the MRI, brought her home, had dinner, and a little bit after dinner, maybe an hour or two after dinner, the pediatrician called us. And that was probably one of the worst days of our lives. That's when they told us that, she told us that Juliana had cancer in her arm that had metastasized to her lymph nodes. So that started a whirlwind of events over the next few weeks. We took her to Sinai Hospital and met her pediatric oncologist for the first time the next day. They talked to us. We met the surgeon who was going to do the biopsy that day. We scheduled appointments to get more scans finished over the next week. Pretty much over the next 2 weeks, we were back and forth for scans, and we had to have an MRI. We had to have a full-body PET CT scans. She had to have a bone marrow biopsy, bone scans, biopsy of her arm. It was very long and involved. And the end result was we found out she had stage 3, group 3 alveolar rhabdomyosarcoma, which she couldn't even say at that point. So that was really a bad experience. Trying to explain to your 5-year-old that she has cancer is really hard to do because they don't really understand it that much. After, I guess, 3 weeks after we found out she had the cancer, she started treatment. The first treatment we had inpatient, mostly because they wanted to make sure there were no reactions to any of the chemotherapy drugs they were giving her. So we spent one night at the hospital. She got chemo. At first she thought it was going to be fun. I told her it was going to be a sleepover, but she found out it wasn't so fun when she started throwing up in the middle of the night. We were able, fortunately that time, to get all the rest of the chemo treatments outpatient, so that was better. At least we only had to spend all day at the hospital and not all night. She had 14 rounds of chemotherapy, around being every 3 weeks, and of course there were some weeks in there we had to skip because her counts weren't high enough to keep going. She had 5 weeks of, 6 weeks, she had 6 weeks that time of radiation therapy, which was every day back and forth, and got really, really bad radiation burns, especially under her arm, because they did the lymph nodes under her arm. It was horrible. She ended up with, I think she had just 1 neutropenic fever, but that was not fun. We ended up spending 5 days there for that. But the end of it was when we finally finished, started treatment at the beginning of March of 1 year. We finally finished the end of January of the following year. Got all of her off-treatment scans, and we're expecting good news. And then we got another little snafu there. They called me in and told me that something had showed up on her PET CT, that it lit up on the PET, and they looked at it on the CT, and it looked like there were lesions on her lungs and that she had relapsed. So even the oncologist was really upset about that. So they managed to schedule a lung biopsy for her for the following day, and went in and did surgery to remove them, and come to find out it wasn't lesions at all. It was just radiation recall, because part of her lung had been hit during the radiation, and then the chemotherapy we were giving her still was causing it to flare up. Anyway, had to put her through unnecessary surgery, but that was good news. So the next 3 years went by, and things slowly returned to normal. We just went every 3 to 4 months for scans, and they always came back clear, and we were really thought Juliana had beat it. Juliana had been off treatment for 3 years. She's now 9 years old, and we really thought she beat cancer. She had just had her scans like about less than a month ago, and she told me that she had this bump in her groin area, and she thought it was because she was playing gym class. They did homeschool gym class at the time, and she got hit by a volleyball, and she thought it was a bruise of some kind or a little lump from getting hit by the ball. So at first we didn't think anything of it, and then she mentioned a week later something about that bruise, and I was like, well, Julie, that should be getting better, be gone by now. So I said, let me see this bruise, and when she showed me the bruise, I knew that was not a bruise. Where it was located, I thought, maybe it's not a swollen lymph node, maybe it's a hernia or something like that. So I took her back to the pediatrician, and I said, please tell me that's not a swollen lymph node. And she looked at it, and she said, it is. So we started looking, and after checking her legs, we found that she had a swollen area in her right thigh. So went right from the pediatrician's office directly back to Sinai Hospital to see her oncologist and started the whole process again. She had to have all the scans over again. She had to have another biopsy done on her right thigh. And we had to come up with a new treatment plan. She ended up having to get another 12 weeks of chemotherapy, totally different chemotherapy than she'd had the first time. Plus, first we did the chemotherapy first that time. We did 12 rounds of that. We finished that, and she tolerated that chemo really well. And we finished it. Then we did 5 weeks of radiation to both areas, both the right thigh and the groin where the lymph node was. And she really flew through the chemotherapy that time easy, didn't have any neutropenic fevers, so we were like, okay, maybe it's gone for good this time. So Julie was only off treatment 4 months from her first relapse until we found out she relapsed again. And it was really weird. We were actually at my uncle's funeral at the graveside service, and we were standing there listening to the minister speak. And she had this awful pain. It was so bad, I thought she was going to pass out. And I actually had to pick her up and carry her back into the church. And then finally the pain subsided after maybe 10 or 15 minutes. It went away by itself. But we knew something was really wrong because she never had that kind of pain ever. And Julie's got a really high pain tolerance. So she had off-treatment scans that were coming due. I'd already scheduled them for, this was on a Sunday that the pain happened, and the scans were scheduled for Tuesday. So I called up, talked to her oncologist, said bring her in, went in, did an exam, didn't find anything from the exam, but decided that if I could talk him into adding it, that he would write a script and add another scan to the area where the pain was. So I called up the radiology place and talked them into doing 3 MRIs back-to-back, which they do not ever do. But I begged and pleaded, and they agreed to do it for me. So I took her the next day, and we had 3 very long MRIs. And then afterwards, I waited and I had them burn them onto a disc because I knew something was really wrong. So we went home from there, had dinner, and then we got a phone call right after dinner, and the doctor said, I want both of you on the phone. So we knew it was not good news. And he told us that she had relapsed again, that the MRI showed that her vena cava was either a clot or being constricted. They couldn't tell which from the MRI. It wasn't very clear. And they needed to do another scan as soon as possible to see what exactly was going on. But it was serious enough that she needed to be admitted that night. So went in and told Juliana and packed a suitcase and went to the hospital and were admitted. We thought we were going to be there maybe 2 or 3 nights, but it ended up we had CT scans that night, and they showed that not only was it definitely compressing the vena cava, but there was another one in her chest that was pushing against her aorta, causing increased pressure. It was dangerous. So she relapsed this time not to another muscle, but it was all the lymph nodes. It was the mediastinal and retroperitoneal lymph nodes in the chest and the pelvis. So we ended up staying. They talked to us, and we came up with another treatment plan. This time it was going to be a really harsh treatment that would have to be given all inpatient for 5 days in a row, every single round. And they needed to start it right away because we had to do something about this tumor. If we couldn't shrink it with chemo, we're going to have to do surgery because you can't have it compressing the vena cava. It'll cut off blood flow to the lower part of your body, and you can't have that. So they scheduled it for surgery. They put Hickman lines in because we're going to need 2 lines to do the treatment they planned. We had that done, and then the very next day they started the first day of the 5 days of chemo, and it was really, really, really nasty. They started with some serious anti-nausea drugs, but just once she started throwing up from this chemo, they couldn't get it stopped. So we ended up spending not just the 5 days that she was getting the chemo, after spending 3 days beforehand, but then a couple of days afterwards too, because they couldn't get her to stop throwing up. And until we could get her to be able to keep down her anti-nausea medicine, we couldn't go home. So I think 10 days later, we finally did get home. They sent her home on fluids because she could hold the pills down, but she was still really dehydrated. So she had fluids at home. And that was the beginning of an entire year of treatment that was just nasty. We were there for a week for treatment, well, Monday through Friday. And then the following 2 or 3, it gradually got longer and longer with each round because it took her longer to recover. But we would be at the hospital 2 days on the weeks we weren't inpatient the whole week, getting blood and platelet transfusions. There were weeks when she would get a blood transfusion and 2 platelet transfusions, like each week for 3 weeks. And then our counts would come up high enough and we'd be inpatient for a week again, and then we'd start the whole cycle all over again. So during that period, I think she got, like, between blood and platelets, over 80 transfusions. It was just really nasty. She also got 2 neutropenic fevers, and one of them actually had bacterial infection in her line, which was like threatening in and of itself. So we ended up in the hospital for 6 days for that on massive amounts of antibiotics. Finally, we made it through the treatment, the chemo treatment, and then went in to see about getting radiation therapy and found out that they weren't going to be able to do both areas at the same time like they had previously because they were such large areas and so much bone marrow was going to be hit that they were afraid it would drop her counts too low, and her immune system still hadn't come back from all that chemo she had. So we ended up having to have 5 weeks of radiation to each area, and we did the 5 weeks back to back. So we went for 10 straight weeks every day back and forth to the hospital, 90 miles round trip, to get the radiation therapy. So it took about 16 months for that treatment before it was finally finished. It was long, hard treatment, but she made it through it and was cancer-free at the end again. While we were in the midst of getting all of Julie's radiation therapy in the summer of 2013, her doctor decided to put her on maintenance chemotherapy. So we went ahead and started with the oral chemo while she was still getting the radiation therapy, and then when that finished, which was like the end of August, then we started beginning of September with also some IV chemotherapy too. That was supposed to be maintenance to stop her from relapsing again. And we continued giving her that, going in when we needed to every other week for the IV and just giving her the daily oral chemo at home. And everything seemed to be going well. And then in middle of March, we started noticing that her right eyelid was drooping. So we took her back into the hospital, and they looked at it and agreed definitely it was drooping, but not being eye doctors, they didn't have a clue where to start with it. So I suggested, since we were already in Baltimore, that I'd see if I could get her in as an emergency visit with her regular ophthalmologist who's seen her for strabismus since she was a little baby. So I got in with her, took her right down the road, a few miles away from the hospital, and took her back, and her ophthalmologist looked at it and started feeling her eye, and he said to me, it's a tumor. So he called her oncologist and told him there's definitely a tumor there, and he told me, don't worry, I know somebody who can help you. And he called a friend of his who happened to work at Sinai Hospital, who's an ophthalmologist and also a plastic surgeon, and he got me in with them like a half hour later. So I drove back and forth between the hospital and his office and back to the hospital, saw the plastic surgeon ophthalmologist, and he talked to her ophthalmologist again. He said he wanted an MRI done of it ASAP. They called and tried to get us in, and they didn't have anything open outpatient for several days, so they decided this needed to be done before then, so they admitted us. So we could get scans done, and also this doctor said that he would come back to the hospital after he was finished all of his office hours up at his satellite office in Pennsylvania. He was going to come back to Sinai Hospital at 5 o'clock and do surgery on her the next day and try to get as much of the tumor out as possible so that there'd be a lot less there to have to do radiation therapy too. So we didn't want to get it too close to her brain in particular when we did the radiation therapy. So he came, we went ahead, had the MRI, had the surgery the next day, and fortunately he was able to get all of the visible cancer out. He wasn't able to get margins, but everything else he got out. So that was really good news. We were still really concerned though, because we were afraid that it could be other places in her body, because it's odd for it to relapse like that again in just a tiny little place like that. So we came home the next day after her surgery. You can't have a PET scan while you're inpatient at the hospital because insurance won't pay for it. So we had to come home on Tuesday, go back in on Wednesday morning, and had a full body PET CT done, and then waited anxiously to hear the results of that. And finally they called us and said that it was nowhere else. That's it. It was just in her eye. So we had to come up with yet another treatment plan. So we decided to do just one more major round of chemo because her counts had never completely recovered from what we'd done previously. And we were afraid we would make her really sick if we did too much. So we did one major round of chemo, and she went to head back to radiation oncology, and they set her up to do radiation to her right eye orbit. Fortunately, the cancer, it wasn't anywhere near her brain. It didn't penetrate the dura. It was just right in that little muscle that controls your eyelid blinking. So they put a little, it's hard to explain, it's a mask thing on her, and they actually hooked her to the table with a mask on so she couldn't move, so they could zap her eye with radiation while she was awake. She had to have this done every day for 5 weeks again. When we finished that, we decided that we would just go back on some maintenance chemo, some low-dose chemo. So we've done several different things since then. We've done a couple different types of oral chemo, and now we've added in some more IV chemo along the way. But she tolerates it very well. Hasn't had any major problems from it. And as of a couple of months ago, when she had her eyelid surgery done and had a port replaced in her chest, everything was fine, everything was clear, and as far as we know, the cancer's still gone, and we're praying that it stays gone. Okay, so right now, Juliana is still on maintenance chemo. She takes little cyclophosphamide pills every day for a week. And then the next week she does etoposide pills every other day for that week, and then we go back, we alternate them. And about every 3 to 4 months we do another round of IV temozolomide to try to keep the cancer from coming back. And also back in July we started her on mistletoe therapy, which I think is helping too. They use it a lot over in Europe, and it can kill some types of cancer. We're not sure if the type she has works well against it or not, because they don't have any data showing whether or not it does. But it also increases killer T cell levels. It's anti-angiogenic, which means it prevents new blood vessels from forming quickly, which is how cancer grows. Without new blood vessels, it can't get bigger. And it basically makes her feel a lot better. It gives her a little bit more energy. So we're hoping that it's making a difference, and so far, no more cancer. Juliana was a really outgoing, I'm not sure how to explain it. She was this really outgoing, rambunctious little toddler. She was my climber. She got into everything. Fearless is what I would describe Julie as when she was really little. And since she's got cancer, when she was barely 5 when she got cancer, she's a lot more subdued. She's a lot more dependent on us, and she's changed. She's not as outgoing as she used to be, and she's also had to mature really, really quickly. She's knowledgeable about things that most adults aren't knowledgeable about. So it's definitely made some negative changes in her, but then it's probably made some positive changes too. She's incredibly positive. It's hard to even put into words. She just knows that everything's going to be fine, and she has this really positive attitude that kind of just rubs off on you and makes you feel like, well, everything's going to be okay, because that's how she feels. She really believes that. She normally looks at the bright side. She takes one day at a time. She doesn't worry about what's going to go on in the future. Juliana has probably become one of the most patient little girls you could ever meet. She knows how to spend hours sitting in a waiting room and not even notice that she spent an hour sitting in the waiting room. We've done so much waiting, so she's become incredibly patient. She's hopeful, she's focused, she's brave, and she comes up with these little things that are absolutely adorable. She always says, "I always worry about nothing." So I remind her whenever she's getting worried about having to get a scan or something, I'll say, "What do you always say you do?" She'll, "I worry about nothing." "That's right, so nothing to worry about." She's like, "That's right." So she's really changed some ways in a positive way from having this. As far as how it's affected the rest of us, it's been an emotional up and down roller coaster that if you told me 8 years ago we were going to make it through it, I would have said there's no way I could ever make it through something like that. But with taking it one day at a time and watching how she handles it, you just kind of grow along with her, and somehow it all works out, and somehow we get through it. So it's every new day brings a new challenge. You just have to learn to hope for the best and look on the bright side and enjoy each moment that you have, because you don't know how many more you're going to get. We also really appreciate all the cards and the gifts and the messages and things that people send, because it really makes you feel good knowing that people care, that other people are praying for, that they care enough to send a little note or send a little gift to her. And it does make her day when she gets little things, especially when she's feeling really down and she gets a gift in the mail or a little card or even a little carve of stickers or something. It makes her feel good that other people care about her and that they're thinking of her and praying for her, and just helps her along, because some days are worse than other days. Some days she's not feeling good. So we really do appreciate it.
I just want to thank everyone for praying for me. It means so much to me. It means so much to my family. And I really need you to pray for me because I'm still in chemo and all that. And it's still really tough. So I really would like those prayers. And they mean a lot to me. Thank you. You know, I've been through some stuff, and I'm not a giver-upper, so you shouldn't be, and I know you can get through this.